Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes and thanks for joining me in today's video, which is my top 10 favourite albums that I picked up in the year 2022. Now, just to make you guys aware, this is not a list of my favourite albums from the year 2022. I actually did a video on that not too long ago. I'll link it in the description below if you want to check that out. This is just a list of my favourite albums that I picked up and bought in the year 2022, so last year. This video is pretty much just a bit of fun, gives me a chance to talk about some albums that I really like, obviously. Yes, there will be a few albums from last year in here, purely because I've just picked them up through the year. But as I said, it's just a bit of fun, and this gives me a chance to talk about some albums that I really enjoy and want to share with you guys. So without delaying any longer, let's just get into this list of my top 10 favourite albums that I picked up in the year 2022. So starting off this list, coming in as my number 10 is Post Malone's album 12 Carat Toothache. Now first of all, sorry about the glare, I don't know how to hold this without getting too much, that should do it. When I did my list of my favourite albums from 2022, I sort of spoke about how I feel like I kind of slept on this album and maybe overlooked how much I actually came back and listened to it throughout the year. I do still stand by that this probably isn't Post Malone's best effort. I'd probably give that to his previous album, Hollywood's Bleeding. I think that's his best to date. But I feel like this album gets too much hate. It's Post Malone taking a step back from his hip-hop / rap style of music and more so showing off his vocal performances and ranges. And there's a lot of good songs on here that I really enjoy that follow that blueprint, you know, Reputation, Lemon Tree. I'm a big fan of those songs. But then even some of the other tracks on here, like Wrapped Around Your Finger and I Like You, I kept coming back to throughout the year. So as I said, maybe not Post Malone's best effort, but I feel like this album does get too much hate. So coming in as my number 10 is Post Malone's 12 Carat Toothache.
I know I said I'd fix it up, but then I drank and smoked too much. Just like I always do, it's not true. I don't want you back.
Coming in at my number 9 was one of the more surprising albums for last year for myself. Here I have Coping Mechanism by Willow. Now, not like going into last year, I wasn't a fan of Willow. Just any of her albums before this one, I didn't really feel a connection with. I feel like Willow is sort of in the same category as Machine Gun Kelly, someone who changed genres and sort of gets a bit too much hate for it, maybe. But I was really impressed by this album. I sort of went out on a limb and just checked it out one late afternoon, sort of had it on in the background, and as I said, I was really impressed. Really catchy songs on here, Curious Furious, Hover Like a Goddess, Batshit, you know, at least all of the songs are pretty decent. Obviously some outshine others, but at the end of the day, I actually really liked this effort from Willow. I did have it in my favourite albums from last year, as I was sort of speaking about then. But maybe if you sort of overlooked this album, I would recommend checking it out. So coming in as my number 9 is Coping Mechanism by Willow. Coming in as my number 8 is actually the first album so far on this list, not from the year 2022, but here I have Bearing's sophomore album, Hello It's You. Now, this was an album at first, when I first got around to listening to it, I wasn't the biggest fan of. I actually feel like that would be a good idea for a top 10 list, albums that grew on me or I thought I didn't like, but this would be an example of it. The first time going around listening to this album, there were a few songs that I liked, but it didn't really click with me. I thought it was one that I'd skip, but I'm so happy I got back around to listening to it because this is an album that's grown on me. Compared to Bearing's other album, they've only got 2 out so far. I feel like the previous one to this, Blue in the Dark, is the more consistent of the two. However, when this album puts forward its best songs, they fucking slap. Songs like Sway, Better Yesterday, Transient Colours, I Feel It All. When those songs are on, this album fucking slaps. So as I said, compared to Blue in the Dark, maybe less consistency. But as I said, slowly growing on me over time, and this was one of my favourite pickups from the year. So coming in as my number 8 is Bearings and their album Hello It's You. This album that I have here as my number 7 is actually the oldest on this top 10 list, so a little bit of a throwback, but here I have the album One of the Boys by Katy Perry. Now, I've spoken about this album in the past before and how I genuinely feel like it is underrated. When people think of Katy Perry now, they think of a mainstream pop artist, which she definitely is, to be fair. Even though I feel like she's definitely fallen off, not much of her music gets played anymore. I rarely hear people mention her. To be fair, I don't listen to much of her new stuff anyway. The latest album that I actually do listen to by Katy Perry is Prism, but that was still a while back. But I genuinely feel like this is Katy Perry's best album, and as I said, is really underrated. It does have a good balance of that early/mid 2000s pop rock feel that used to be all over the radio, and I feel like we all took for granted. It just reminds me of a better time. But I feel like it's pulled off so amazingly here. Just, as I said, great, genuine instrumentals thrown in the back with Katy Perry's style of vocals, which suit really well. There's many songs on this album that a lot of people would know. I Kissed a Girl, Waking Up in Vegas, Hot and Cold. For a title track, One of the Boys, I still feel like it is such an underrated song, but it goes deeper than that. There's songs like Mannequin, Self-Inflicted, Fingerprints. They're all genuinely good songs, and I feel like a lot of people, as I said, overlook this album and how good the balance of pop and rock were on this album. Now, there is a little bit of an asterisk next to this contender in this top 10 because technically I already owned this album. I just had to pick it up again because my last disc or copy of this album broke, so I had to pick it up again. But I really do like this album, so I wanted to include it in this top 10 list because I genuinely feel like, as I said, it does get overlooked. So here is my number 7, I have One of the Boys by Katy Perry. Moving on to my number 6, and back to albums actually from the year 2022, and here I have Daisy Chain by the band Slowly Slowly. Now, the band Slowly Slowly, I was never a big fan of them in the past. I just thought they were okay. I never had anything against them. Just no real drive to actually go deeper into their catalogue and check them out. However, my brother is a big fan of this band, and he was really hyping up this album. He was really excited for it to release. He played a few songs just around the house and in the car when we were driving together, whatever. And it sort of got me interested in the album, and I'm so happy that I did find an interest and a drive to go check this one out because it really did surprise me. The first 5 tracks, Daisy Chain, Blueprint, Turn It Around, Forget You, Nothing On, and it even goes deeper than that, Hold My Breath, Long Shot. This album is stacked of really good songs. It carries along a really cool, chilling summer vibe. It really was a great album. It actually drove me to pick up more of Slowly Slowly's back catalogue, check out some of their previous albums. I really did enjoy this one. I'm so happy that I did force myself to go and check this one out. So coming in as my number 6 is Daisy Chain by the band Slowly Slowly. Coming in at my number 5, I have the album Blue in the Dark by Bearings. Now, this is the second appearance from Bearings on this list. I really feel like they're a good up-and-coming band. This was my first taste of them, and I still fucking love them. This album's from a few years back, and I'm really looking forward to them releasing more music. I sort of spoke about when I mentioned Hello, It's You. That album, when it's on, it is really fucking firing. However, this one had the more consistency, and I can just go on from that. This album, 11 tracks, all of them are solid. There are no bad songs on this album, obviously some that I favour more over others. I really like Where You Are, such a really cool opening track and probably the most unique on the album. Eyes Closed, Blue in the Dark, Goodbye, Love and Decay. There are so many fucking good songs in this album. And as I said, carries such good consistency with it, especially for a debut album. A lot of bands are finding their feet and sort of, coming together to find their sound or whatever. And to have an album that is genuinely from start to finish really consistent, it's such a great effort. So coming in as my number 5, I have Blue in the Dark by Bearings. Coming in at my number 4 is the album OK by the band As It Is. Now, As It Is a band with 4 albums out currently. This is the second of 4, so from 2017, so it took me a while to actually pick up this album. I'm so happy that I could though, because I was a fan of this album since it first dropped. I feel like As It Is are a band that get, I was about to say too much hate, but it's not even hate, maybe just undermined. I feel like maybe a lot of people overlook them because lead vocalist Paddy Walters started off as a YouTuber, which a lot of people seem to frown on for some reason. You know, you got to start somewhere. But I'm a big fan of this album, as I said. I'm not sure if it's As It Is best album to date. It could be this or maybe The Great Depression, which is the album following this one, so it's a little bit 50-50. But as I said, I really do enjoy this album. Really solid. Tracks like Pretty Little Distance, OK, Patchwork Love, No Way Out. Even a track like The Coast Is Where Home Is, maybe not the best song, but really fucking catchy. And I do come back to this album a lot. So coming in at my number 4 is OK by the band As It Is. Coming in at my number 3 is actually the last album on this list that was actually released in 2022, and here I have Fear, Fuck Everything and Run by the band Stand Atlantic. Now, this was one of my favourite albums from last year. I'm trying not to spoil that list for those who haven't seen that video yet, but if you actually heard what I just said and have your brain switched on, you'll sort of put 2 and 2 together on where it actually was positioned. But anyway, this was one of my favourite albums from last year, and if you said to me that Stand Atlantic would have one of the best albums of 2022, to be fair, I actually would have a few questions because, not to say I don't like Stand Atlantic, this is their 3rd album, and their 2 previous ones are actually albums I do enjoy, and do come back and listen to every now and then, but they're nothing to write home about. And Stand Atlantic are a band that have sort of gone in a more electronic sound with their newer albums, and so I was wary going into this album, but I really was impressed. You know, tracks like Doomsday, Pity Party, Van Gogh, Dumb, Hair Out, Death Wish, Switchblade, Blood Clot, I'm almost all the way through the track list there. This album is just really addictive, and it's a bit of a cheeseburger album. You know, it's nothing fancy, but at the end of the day, everyone loves cheeseburgers. This album's just fun. Yeah, really addicting. Just kept coming back to it. So coming in at my number 3 for albums I picked up in 2022, I have Fear by Stand Atlantic.
With the filters applied, the anxiety dies for the thousands with quick fix all over their eyes, and I won't say I'm surprised.
Coming in as my runner-up at position number 2, I have Identity Crisis by Waster. Now, I've said this so many times before, but Waster as a band in general are so underrated. I rarely hear anybody talk about them, but this album in particular, if you love pop-punk music, you really should check this out because it is so fucking good. It's one of the most underrated modern pop-punk albums that honestly I can think of. As I said, I just rarely hear anybody talk about this band or this album. For a comparison, I guess the closest thing that I can think of is Neck Deep. If you're a fan of the band Neck Deep, this should be right up your alley. I mean, I just love this album. It's from 2019, I believe, 2018, close enough. This could have been one of my favourite albums from that year. Tracks like Tell Me More, Crisis, Hide Everything Sharp really shot up the list for me of favourite tracks on this album. Silly Me, Riddle Me This. There's just so many good songs on this album, and as I said, I definitely would recommend it. I thought this album was going to be number 1 on this list when I was sort of putting it together, only because my number 1, I thought I picked it up in the year before, but turns out I picked it up in 2022, so it was fair game. But coming in as my number 2, as I said, I can't recommend this album enough, especially if you're a fan of pop-punk music. I have Identity Crisis by Waster. Now coming in as my number 1, I have the album Armageddon by the band Between You and Me. Yeah, this is such a great album from the year 2021. Between You and Me is a band from Melbourne, so relatively close to me. That's not me being biased, but I just feel like that's something cool to add in there as well. This is just such a great album, and I feel like not a lot of people know this album or are aware of it. Again, like Identity Crisis, it's a pop-punk album, so for those who do like pop-punk music like myself, it should be right up your alley. As I said, I just generally don't hear people talk about this enough. When I saw Between You and Me play live late last year, their track Goldfish, I actually found out was about the record company that put out this album, Hopeless Records, and how the band felt like they didn't promote this album enough, and I couldn't agree more. Actually, my top 3 albums were by Hopeless Records, but they sign good bands, but maybe not doing the best with some bands that really do have potential, like Between You and Me. I also featured this band in Biggest Improvements Between Albums, because this is their sophomore album, and their first album was okay, but nothing to write home about. This album is such an improvement, and I'm so excited to see what they do for a third album. Hopefully something comes out maybe later this year, or I'm guessing maybe early 2024, something like that. But I was super impressed by this album, and I loved picking it up last year, so here I have Armageddon by Between You and Me. Alright, so now as usual at the end of the top 10 video we'll do a quick little recap. At number 10 I had 12 Carat Toothache by Post Malone. Number 9 I had Coping Mechanism by Willow. My number 8 was Hello It's You by the band Bearings. My number 7 was One of the Boys by Katy Perry. Sorry, I'm trying to keep glare off these as well. My number 6, Daisy Chain by Slowly Slowly. Number 5 was Bearings again with their debut album Blue in the Dark. Number 4 was Okay by the band As It Is. Number 3, Fear, or Fuck Everything and Run by Stand Atlantic. Number 2, Identity Crisis by Waster. And number 1 was Armageddon by Between You and Me. Alright, so thank you for joining me in today's video, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming around for this piece of content. This is actually going to be the last video that I had planned and lined up for my big January. Going into February, I might just take it a little bit easier because I've been really rushing to try and push out these videos and keep content up for January. I promised at the start of the year that January was going to be big on my channel, and hopefully I didn't disappoint. But yeah, I'm going to maybe take it a little bit slower just going into February. I'm going to be going back to doing more random horror reviews and smaller videos like that, but I enjoy filming them, so hopefully you guys enjoy watching them. But I just wanted to make you guys aware of that also. But thank you for joining me again, guys, here on my channel. Hopefully you guys liked this little video. But let me know your thoughts on any of these albums if you've heard them, or maybe just let me know a few of your favorite albums that you've been listening to lately. They don't need to be from the year 2022 like any of these were, even though a couple were actually. But yeah, just let me know some of your favorite albums that you've been listening to, or maybe some albums or bands that you recommend for myself. And I'll see you soon for some more content. Thanks, guys.